In this video, we'll give an overview of the tool database and look at how we can use the tool database to organize our tools. We will begin by giving a brief overview of the interface. Then we will look at how we can add, remove, and edit machines, materials, and tools. Let's open the tool database dialog by clicking on this icon here in the toolpaths tab. And that opens the tool database dialog. The dialog is divided into three parts. So we have this top bar here, which controls materials and machines. Then we have this central part, which is divided into a left-hand tree. And as I click the left-hand tree, we see the right-hand panel here gets updated. And this panel shows information about the selected tool. And at the bottom, we have this commands bar, and this is where we add and remove tools, toolpath groups, or we import and export our tool databases. Whenever we use a tool database, then there is an active material selected. This is the material shown in the drop-down menu here. And similarly, there's an active material selected, which is shown in this drop-down menu here. As I go through the drop-down menu, then I'm changing the active material. I can add in new materials by opening the material management dialog by pressing this button here. And this brings up a new dialog. And here, if I press this button, that allows me to add in a new material. For example, birch plywood. If I hit apply, then we see that that material now appears in our list. If I want to remove a material, I can select it and hit this remove button here. And that will give me a warning telling me that I have feeds and speeds associated with this material for some of my tools, and that will no longer exist if I delete this material. I don't want to delete this material at this time, so I'm just going to hit no. I'm going to hit OK here, and we should see now that our material appears in the drop-down menu. Similarly, I can come over here to the right-hand side of the bar and click on this button to open the machine management dialog. From within this dialog, we can add new machines to the database. We can remove machines, or we can edit the existing information that we have about a particular machine. For example, if I know that my large machine here has a G-code controller and it's 96 inches by 48 inches, then I can add this information in here. I can also tick one of these two checkboxes if my machine supports a rotary axis or an automatic tool changer. And I'll click apply, and that will save the changes for this particular machine. If I had another machine, for example a home machine, I would click this button here and enter some information that is specific to my home CNC. Again, I might have a G-code controller, but this machine may only be a meter in width and height. Hit apply, and now this new home CNC machine appears in my drop-down list. Every tool in the tool database consists of two separate entities. There are the physical properties of the tool, such as its diameter and the number of flutes, and we call this the tool geometry. And then there is the data that may change if we were using the same tool with different materials, and we call this information the cutting data. To distinguish between the two types of data, the tool geometry is stored at the top of the information panel, and the cutting data is stored towards the bottom of the information panel. Imagine we have a single 1/4 inch end mill in our workshop. Some properties of this tool will not change whatever material we use, for example the tool's type or the fact that it has a 1/4 inch diameter. This is the tool geometry. However, other properties, such as feeds and speeds, will depend dramatically on the material that we are cutting. For example, if we were cutting in hardwood, then we would expect the feeds and speeds to be very different versus if we were cutting sign foam. But rather than represent this as two different tools in the tool database, we can have just a single tool and adjust just the cutting data to match the active material. So let's try this now. We will come up to the material management dialog, and we'll add in a new sign foam material and hit apply. Okay, and now we see our material has changed to sign foam, and it was our 1/4 inch end mill that we wanted to change the feeds and speeds for. When we look at this tool, we see that there are no feed and speeds listed, and that's because we haven't yet told the tool database what feed and speeds we should apply for this particular material. Initially, we're just going to copy the settings for this tool from our hardwood material. So we'll hit copy, and that's copied the feeds and speeds from our hardwood material. But now we want to adjust them, so I'm going to up the feed rate to 100 inches per minute, and I'm going to double the plunge rate as well, and maybe increase the spindle speed, and I'll hit apply. And we'll notice now that when I toggle the material, the feeds and speeds are updated to match the active material. Another thing to notice here is that for the end mill where we've set the feed and speeds, then the tool type icon is displayed in a solid color, but for all the other tools where we've not specified cutting data, then we have this sort of ghosted icon, and if I click on any of them, we see this copy settings thing that we saw before. If I wanted to just filter my tree so it only showed the tools that have had the cutting data specified, then I can do that by right clicking and selecting this hide unset tools, turning that option on, and now it just shows me the tools that have cutting data. Each tool in our tool database will have different adjustable parameters depending on its type. For example, if I look at a V-bit tool, then it has this included angle parameter, whereas an end mill has no such parameter. However, there are lots of fields that are common to all the tools. So every tool supports a tool name, listed up here, a tool notes field, and this can be helpful to include reminders about properties of the tool. The tool notes can also be output by the post-processor depending on the controller, and that may be useful for some post-processing operations. They always include a diameter of some form and the number of flutes. To update any field, we just adjust a value and hit apply. If we try to make a change and then go to a different tool, we'll get a warning asking us whether we want to save the changes that we've just made. The tool name is slightly different, and in order to edit the tool name, then we have to click this icon to the left of the tool name here. When we open the dialog, then we see an input box, and then the contents of this input box are interpreted by the software to generate the name for the tool. We could just type in a new name for our tool. For example, I may want to call it something like 6mm end mill, and perhaps I may want to put a manufacturer's ID or something like that. And then this naming system will just use this as our new name for our tool, and we'll hit OK and it will appear in our tool list. However, if I accidentally updated the diameter, then you'll see that the name doesn't change. It still displays as a 6mm end mill, and that could lead to some confusion when I was choosing this tool for my operations. So let's change that back. So one of the things that the tool naming system allows us to do is to use facts about our tool in the name, and these are called variables. So here, when I've said 6mm end mill, I really would like that to be replaced with the actual diameter of the tool. And one way I can do this is to write the word diameter in braces. So diameter here is what we would call a variable, and every time the software sees the word diameter in braces, then it replaces it with the number 6. And there are lots of different variables for all different types of things. So I'm just going to remove the format entirely and think about how I'd like all my tools to be displayed. I may want to display the tool type, and that can be done using the tool type variable. And then I may wish to include the diameter, and that can be done with the diameter variable. But as you may imagine, it's quite a lot of work remembering what all these variables are. And so luckily we can use the right click menu, and within the right click menu it shows you what all the variables are, their different names, and if you select one of them, for example, I may want to use the units for my particular tool, then that will be substituted in, and we can see now that the tool name is automatically generated just from this format string. If I'd like to use this format string as a default for all tools of this type, I can click this option here. And if I wanted to update all my existing end mill tools to use this new tool type name, then I could click this option here. And now if I hit OK, we'll see that all of the end mills have been updated to use this new naming system. This new name formatting system is very powerful, and all the details about the different variables and their substitution can be found in the reference manual. Whilst the tool database supports different types of tools as standard, there are many different tool geometries, for example OG cutters, and it would be impossible for the software to support all of them. However, it is typical for the tool manufacturers to provide a vector which represents a cross-section of the tool geometry, and we can use this vector to create a tool with the correct geometry. We'll call these tools form tools. So let's close the tool database, and we'll open up an example of one such tool geometry here. And this file contains a full cross section of the tool that we wish to create in the tool database. So first let's select the geometry and go back into the tool database, And underneath this specialist tab here, we're going to click to add a new tool. We'll choose the tool type to be a form tool, and we get this error, and the error says there's no suitable vector selected for the form tool, and that's because it expects to find only the right hand side of the tool profile, whereas here we've got a full cross section. So the first thing we need to do is go back out of the tool database dialog and edit the vector so it's just the right hand side of the profile. So I'm going to hit OK, come out, and just node edit and delete the all but the right hand side of this tool geometry. And then we'll select it again and go back into the tool database dialog. Choose the tool that we were hoping to add in. Again, select form tool, and we see now that it's updated the image here to show us what our form tool will look like, and it is indeed what we would expect. We would click create settings here to add some feeds and speeds. We'll just use the defaults for now and hit apply, and this form tool is now in our tool database. We've just seen how we would add in a new tool. If we wish to remove a tool, we would just select the tool in question and click on the remove icon here at the bottom, and that will tell us that we're going to be removing one tool, but we will remove it for each of the machines and materials that this tool is defined for. So you get this just warning telling you about that, and if you wish to delete, you hit yes, and then that tool will be deleted across all of your materials and machines. As well as being able to add in tools, we can also add in these groups, which are useful for organizing our tools. If we want to add in a group, we just select the group that we wish our group to be in. For example, I may wish to have a subgroup under this specialist group here, and then I click add a group, and a new group appears underneath. I would give it a name, for example, form tools, and then hit apply, and we see this is updated. If I wanted to move tools into this group, then I would select them and then just drag them underneath, and we see now that this form tool appears within this form tools group. If I select the group and hit delete, then that will not only delete the group, it will also delete all of the tools that lie within the group. So I'm going to hit no in this case. If I want to export a subset of my tool database, I can do that by selecting the group. So for example, let's say I want to export these VBit tools. I select this group, I come and click on the export selected group button, and I'm going to call this VBit tools and hit save. And then I'm just going to remove this selected group. I'm going to agree to the warning. Now if I import and choose the exported VBit tools, I'll get this warning telling me that I'm going to import some tools, and do I want to overwrite or merge? I'm just going to import, and we see that my VBit tools now appear in the list again. One other way that we can now import and export tool databases is through our online tool database syncing. So if we click this button at the top, then it will log us in to enable online tool database synchronization. So I'm going to click that button. And after I've gone through the process of logging in, I get this message and it says that my tool database is out of date and tells me or asks me if I'd like to update. And if I hit yes, then it synchronizes by pulling down another version of my tool database that I had online. If I then make some change to a particular tool, for example this ball nose tool, perhaps I'm going to change its spindle speed. I make the change and hit apply. I can then press the upload button here, and that will again synchronize, overwriting the database on the server. And now when I pull this database from another instance of the software, then it will pull down the latest changes. For example, if I were to change this now back to 12,000 RPM and pull down without pushing up, you see it's updated back to 18,000 RPM. If you ever find yourself wanting to revert back to a previous version of your tool database, or perhaps the default tool database that is shipped with the software, then you can still do that. So the first thing to do is exit the tool database and then go to File, and right down here there's this option, Open Application Data Folder, and within that there's a tool database directory. Within the tool database directory there's a single file called tools.vtdb, and that's the tool database that is used by the software. You see there's also several other ones. So there's a backup one, which is taken when you start the software, and there's a .vectric one, and that's the one that we supply with the software. So if you wish to revert to the original one, then you just overwrite tools.vtdb with either the backup or the .vectric tools database. As well as that, if you go back up a directory, in the backups directory, there's also a tool database folder, and within there we take backups every day that the software is used of the tool database. So you could revert back to the tool database on any given day, simply by just taking a copy of this and overwriting the tools.vtdb in your tool database folder. And that brings us to the end of this guide on the tool database.